Welcome to the Calm Analysts channel. This is Boris Tizenhausen with you. Today is August 20th. There are a lot of interesting news stories. So Putin is proposing a meeting with Zelensky in Moscow. Is this a genuine desire for negotiations or is it a trap? And Trump won't be at the meeting, again at Putin's request. Lavrov has shared what, in his opinion, Kyiv should do, and the Kremlin's program how to make people around the world love Russians again. 10 countries are ready to send their troops to Ukraine, but there is one important overlooked detail. Meanwhile, Europe doesn't believe Putin, and they have their own alternative plan. All this and more in today's episode. If this is your first time on this channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. So, during a call with Trump, Putin suggested meeting with Zelensky in Moscow. Well, to get ahead of the story, I'll say that Zelensky naturally refused. I think the whole world clearly remembers the tragedy near Smolensk in which Polish President Kaczynski died and his wife, and in fact the entire military and political leadership of the country. 96 people died then. There were no survivors, none at all. Well, for some reason, I'm sure that Putin definitely wouldn't have let Zelensky leave alive. At least not alive and well. Anything could have happened, I don't know. If he doesn't accept food there, I don't know, radioactive elements in the chair or anywhere else. In other words, I think for him, poisoning, doing something like that, was a matter of principle. Of course, no one was planning to give Putin such a gift. But there's another important reason why Putin immediately suggested Moscow. For such an important meeting, whether it's going to be 2- or 3-sided, we don't know how it will go. At least Trump said that he won't be present at the meeting. Well, by the way, Putin asked him not to be there. He wants to talk to Zelensky face to face. So for such an important meeting, where decisions need to be made and important documents signed, it's clear that Putin himself will have to go, not that chubby grasshopper we saw in Alaska. But he's afraid to go himself. Maybe in Moscow it's not scary, but somewhere else it is. So it's not just about wanting to do something to Zelensky, but also a basic fear for his own life. Putin is just seriously paranoid about this. It's no wonder he's dug all those bunkers across Russia. And Putin, you know, he's like that main arachnid from Robert Heinlein's novel Starship Troopers. That is, the main one, a giant beetle larva that controlled the other bugs, made them kill, sent them out, and so on. So, when they pulled this larva out of the underground into the light, the experts came up and said, it's afraid, or more precisely, it is afraid. And it seems to me that Putin is exactly the same. If you drag him out into the light, out of the country somewhere, it is afraid. And so this Botox larva really, in an unfamiliar environment, not sheltered by a bunker, will be afraid. So it is afraid, friends. You don't need to come. I want to see Zelensky face to face. According to Politico, that's exactly how Putin phrased it. No need to come, I'll talk to him myself. Putin doesn't want there to be any witnesses to this meeting, this conversation, and accordingly to Putin's humiliation. After all, if there's a third party, they'll have their own perspective on how the meeting went. Well, a sort of arbiter, right? In other words, Putin doesn't want Trump to be an arbiter over him. And everything Putin says, Trump could also hear if he's at the meeting. That's exactly why Putin wants a one-on-one meeting. For him, that's less humiliating. Plus, traditionally, the Russian side will be able to present its own version of events. But when there are two sides, you can choose to believe either one. If a third party says he's lying, it happened the way Zelensky says, what then? That's why Putin can also try to openly threaten during this one-on-one meeting. In other words, he can use his favorite tactic, threats. Although I don't know if it will be scary or not, or how exactly he will threaten. It seems to me that Putin is really in an extremely difficult position right now. Yes, for now he's still managing to maneuver, not without the help of Donald Trump, by the way, but that won't last much longer. And Trump responded, I'm sure I'll arrange a bilateral meeting between Zelensky and Putin, but I won't participate in it myself. So he even accepted this rule of Putin's. Well, so Lavrov came out and decided once again to make the whole world love Russians. I quote, "We will not agree to end the war unless there is respect for the security of the Russian Federation and the rights of Russians in Ukraine." And remind me, even now during the war, how many cases have there been where, well, let's say some incidents happened with Russians in Ukraine? I'm not talking about those who came here with weapons. There are quite a few Russians with Russian passports in Ukraine. So just because someone had a Russian passport, they came and did something? How many such cases have there been? Can anyone tell me? I can't recall any such cases recently. I'll go further. There's the Russian Volunteer Corps, there's the Freedom of Russia Legion, who also have Russian passports. They're citizens of the Russian Federation, but they're fighting for their new Russia, and they're fighting for Ukraine. So, where was Lavrov before Russia attacked Ukraine, before the annexation of Crimea and the occupation of Donbass? Was anyone here infringing on the rights of Russians? Please tell me. So respect for the security of the Russian Federation, just listen to that. Respect for the security of the Russian Federation. Maybe I forgot something. In the entire history of Putin's rule, who has attacked Russia? Let's list them. Oh, that's right, no one. Which of Russia's neighbors would suddenly decide to attack a nuclear state? If we're talking about China, they won't even need to attack. Putin will just give them everything anyway. Just in case he even had his little Putinists and Kabaevites learn Chinese, so they could understand their new master. Another question, why do Russians always demand some kind of special rights for themselves, by the way? We demand to be respected. We demand to be respected. People don't respect you just because you demand it, because respect is something you have to earn through normal, reasonable behavior, a proper attitude, and respect for other cultures, not just by saying, we demand to be respected. So yes, this whole we demand to be respected thing is purely about that imperial mindset. And also about the attitude, this sort of peculiar sense of privilege. Have you ever seen Norwegian houses in other countries anywhere in the world? Maybe someone has seen Azerbaijani houses? Or maybe Georgian houses? No? But Russians have set up their Russian houses all over different countries, and through them they have carried out, or at least used to carry out, agent operations, subversive activities, and intelligence work. Let me put it this way, even if you enshrine in law the obligation to respect Russians, it would be better for those cocky Russians, the imperialists, you know, the classic type with a t-shirt featuring Putin stretched over a round belly, where Putin is literally splitting at the seams and starting to look like the one who flew to Alaska. For those Russians, it's probably best not to show up in civilized countries at all. I think they understand this perfectly well themselves. You know what else is at issue here? When our defenders return and, well, after the war travel to some country and encounter one of these Putin fans demanding respect for themselves, I think justice will be served there. And to be honest, I think these imperial-minded Russians will face a lot of trouble abroad. Well, let's hope they stop traveling to civilized countries. By the way, friends, speaking of our defenders, let me remind you, we have an important fundraiser for the 1st Medbat, the 1st Medical Battalion. Our medics are truly wonderful people who are now saving the lives of our defenders, who in turn are protecting the country and all of us. So let's do this for them. Let's close this fundraiser. They are raising money for the mall. The mall is an unmanned evacuation vehicle with an armored capsule that can hold a wounded soldier, and it drives under shrapnel, under bullets across rough terrain, taking the wounded to a safe distance. This is essentially an investment, a direct investment, in saving the lives of both our defenders, who are rescued when wounded, and our medics, who won't have to drive themselves through mines and shells. And unfortunately, there are also various unpleasant incidents there as well. So let's help our medics, help our soldiers, and save as many of our defenders' lives as possible. The link to donate is in the description of this video and also in the comments. There is Mono, there is Privat, and there is PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you, to everyone who helps Ukraine, to everyone who helps the armed forces of Ukraine, and from our soldiers as well. And we pass on their immense gratitude. I wish all of them to return home alive and healthy to their families and loved ones. Let's help our 1st Medical Battalion. By the way, friends, Just recently, we delivered gifts to the 101st Separate Battalion for the fundraiser we completed, FPV drones with fiber optics. And it so happened that since we didn't manage to stop in time and collected a bit more than needed, 2 additional Mavka antennas were also sent to them. And here is a photo, which, well, I am always amazed by the humility of our soldiers every time. They say thank you 100 times. I tell them, no, thank you. Well, in general, these meetings are always very touching. So, from the fighters, from our defenders, you have their immense gratitude for this fundraiser. The gifts have already gone off to break down the uninvited guests into atoms. By the way, friends, if you're not watching on my channel, the link to the fundraiser is available via the QR code. You can follow it and help. Let me say it again. You are simply the best. We're doing something really important. So the meeting between Zelensky and Putin should take place as soon as possible. It's being arranged by Vance, Rubio, and Witkov, or Witkov if you prefer. In other words, they will be coordinating work with Russia and Ukraine. It's a pity Kellogg isn't part of this group. But also, I quote, the US has seen the light at the end of the tunnel regarding the resolution of the war. And also Trump hopes that he'll go to heaven if he ends the war in Ukraine. Verbatim, if I can make it so that 7,000 people aren't killed every week, I think I'll go to heaven. Well, I won't really comment on that. God willing, of course, we'll see how it turns out. But here's a question. What if you could have done something, could have prevented people from dying, but instead you let the maniac kill a few more, another 7,000 a week? What does the Holy Scripture say about that? Maybe there are some experts on this topic in my comments. Do they go to heaven or not? The US Secret Service is preparing for Trump's visit to Budapest, where a meeting between Zelensky and Putin might take place. Politico tells us this. Well, after Zelensky refused to fly to Moscow, can you imagine? So what was Putin even counting on? Let's have him come here to Moscow. In general, the location could still change, but Hungary is being called the top priority for the White House. So what does that mean, right? So if something gets signed there, we'll end up, as they say, with a second Budapest memorandum on our hands. And I don't know, maybe this is someone's cruel joke. Well, okay, I'm not being sarcastic, but it really could turn out that way. And actually, there's not much that needs to be changed. The guarantor is the same, the United States is there, and Russia will be guaranteeing something for us. See how it all works out? By the way, what do you think, who will Orban bow lower to if both Donald Trump and Putin come? I think that with such political instinct and the ability to sit on several chairs at once, doing the splits no less, Orban will still lean closer to Putin. The calculation here is very simple. Trump will leave after some time. Well, it's a democracy, they'll elect someone else. Donald Trump can't run for a third term. But Putin has already been in power for over 20 years. That is, let me remind you, Orban himself has been in power for almost 19 years. 4 years, then a break, and now he's been ruling for 15 years straight. So, let's be honest, the dependence on Russian energy resources there is enormous. But you see, next spring, this rule might come to an end. The opposition party TISO is gaining quite a lot of support there, Orban shouts, accusing Brussels and Ukraine, "You're playing along with them! But you're doing everything to turn Ukraine against you first and foremost, and naturally Brussels as well. So how are they supposed to behave?" And Russian energy supplies might stop coming in, just like there's already a pause now after the latest strike on the Druzhba oil pipeline. But here's the thing, by the way, this is a question I keep asking. How did Orban, having such a significant advantage over other European countries, those that don't buy Russian energy, with this advantage of cheap Russian gas and oil, how did he manage to drive Hungary to the bottom ranks in terms of citizens' purchasing power in the European Union? How is that possible? Must be some kind of talent, I guess. Well, here's another interesting question about Budapest. If the meeting really is going to take place there, how does Putin plan to get there? Well, it's one thing to fly over the Bering Strait from Russia to Alaska, And even then, apparently, he didn't actually go to Alaska himself. Well, you saw that strange half-humanoid, half-who knows what. But in this case, he'd have to fly right over unfriendly countries. How is he going to approach? Through Italy and then Austria, or what? or through Serbia. In any case, all dictators have this thing about flights and assassination attempts. It's no coincidence that Kim Jong-un spends several days rattling along to Putin in an armored train, but never gets on a plane. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It helps promote the channel and helps promote an alternative to Putin's propaganda, or to put it mildly, a different point of view. Nevertheless, Europe remains skeptical about possible agreements with Putin. To quote, Europe is convinced that Trump's peace talks will fail, but still wants them. But they want them for an understandable reason. In other words, they see this peace summit as a chance to expose Putin's bluff, and at the same time to strengthen the arguments in favor of new sanctions, which Donald Trump has been promising for a while now, dangling them like a carrot, but still hasn't actually implemented. Oh, there is a 25% tariff against India, but that's still a very light, very easy version. Overall, the diplomats who participated in the informal consultations share this skepticism. It's clear that if we find ourselves in a situation where Putin clearly shows he doesn't want a ceasefire, then that's it. Sanctions will go ahead. But what reasons does Putin have to end this war? That's something I've been thinking about myself. Right now, wherever his troops are stationed, here and now, seriously, hooray, victory, we've sacrificed 1 million Russian citizens. And now we have a very small piece of land compared to all of Russia, a piece of land with destroyed cities where we'll have to pour in billions just to restore something. What is that supposed to be? Well, yes, the economy isn't doing well, really not well at all, but Putin can still keep fighting, that's true. Especially if no new sanctions are imposed. Then here I remember another one of Putin's buddies from this club of aging dictators who's been lying low and keeping quiet lately. I'm talking about Lukashenko. After all, the Zapad 2025 exercises are supposed to take place there in mid-September. There's really not much time left until then. For this, the Russian contingent is being transferred to Belarus, and Russian troops are already there. Granted, not in large numbers, but they are present. Honestly, I don't know how they're going to conduct exercises with such a small number, but I thought, let me check what the Tuba Tsar is up to. I go to Lukashenko's channel, which is run by his court entourage, and it turns out he's meeting with the president of Iran. And also Donald Trump has announced that he's ready to meet with Lukashenko. Well, I think things are really taking off for Trump. His goal, by the way, is a noble one, to free more than 1,200 political prisoners in one fell swoop. So, overall, it's a good goal. And so I look at Lukashenko, at his son Kolya, who, by the way, doesn't leave his side for a moment. And I see an old, tired dictator who is still desperately afraid to give up power. He already has tremors, he's not well, he's short of breath, he's put on a lot of weight, but he still doesn't want to give up power, because he knows that only Kolya won't betray him. He believes that power should only be passed on to Kolya as an inheritance. But even then it's not certain. How to carry out this transfer of power is still unclear. And since he's already gotten into the same motorcycle with a sidecar as Putin, they'll have to answer together. So now, all that's left for these two tired old men is to threaten the whole world with their hazel sticks, or maybe with potatoes, or something else. And Lukashenko says, let's hold a meeting here. Let Zelensky and Putin come to Belarus. We'll organize everything. That's what his press secretary announced. We're not trying to impose ourselves as mediators. No, actually, you're trying very hard to do just that. Lukashenko understands that, well, even Putin is being reined in when it comes to what he wants. And as for Lukashenko, no one is going to stand on ceremony with him at all. Well, Trump shakes hands with all the entrenched dictators, sort of like a savior, but for dictators. That's probably how it is. That's how everything looks for now. Well, thank you, of course. Belarus isn't needed as a venue. There's no need to prepare any meeting between Zelensky and Putin. You know who you should be preparing a meeting for? Lukashenko with the Kalinovsky regiment. I think that would be an epic meeting, one that would go down in all the textbooks. By the way, it seems to me, and I'm probably even sure of it, that the Belarusian army wouldn't fight, first of all, against Belarusians with combat experience who would start returning home. After all, this isn't the riot police who disperse and beat up students. So Lukashenko would flee, like Assad did, that's roughly the scenario, to Russia or maybe to China. That's quite possible. In Russia, it's all kind of Assad just disappeared, right? He took a plane full of money, some jewelry, gold, precious stones, and just vanished somewhere in the Moscow suburbs. By the way, the son of the root vegetable, the main root vegetable, Kolenka, is studying at Peking University. So he and Putin have this thing in common, sending their offspring to become more Chinese in this way. So Bloomberg has just come out with this rather encouraging and quite positive news, but the significant problem is that those individuals who, well, okay, let me begin by addressing the main headline itself. About 10 countries are preparing to send troops to Ukraine, including the United Kingdom and France, who are getting ready to send their forces after the war is over. It is assumed that, at the first stage, the multinational group will focus on strengthening the armed forces of Ukraine and training Ukrainian soldiers. At the same time, as Bloomberg sources clarified, the troops will be stationed far from the front line. Well, in general, everything is clear here. In the coming days, European officials will meet with their American counterparts to clarify exactly what kind of guarantees will be provided, which contingents will be deployed, from which countries, and who and how will ensure security. Well, look, what's important here is what mandate they will arrive with, where they will be stationed, and in what numbers. And it's also important whether the coalition, I'm not sure, obviously this won't all be under NATO or the United States, whether they will provide air defense coverage for the cities or regions where these troops are stationed. So in general, there are a lot of different buts and caveats. But an operational coordination center will be opened in Kyiv. And headquarters has already been established, which will be based in Paris and then in London. So for now, discussions are ongoing, but everyone is being very cautious. That is, let me just remind you, after the war there will be a contingent that will neither fight nor there's also the question, who will monitor the ceasefire then? So in general, they're being cautious, extremely cautious. In general, the more cautious you are now, the more risks you'll have to take later. I mean, with the Russian Federation, if they hadn't been so soft with it, there wouldn't be a need to prepare for a new war, because by now, with strict sanctions and proper pressure on Putin and the Russian Federation, there would be almost nothing left of the Russian economy. But only now have we heard, wow, what tools we have. Wow, what sanctions. Yes, but Ukraine is holding on thanks to its defenders. Ukraine is standing thanks to Ukrainians who support the front, so Ukrainians and everyone helping Ukraine, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, subscribe to this channel, and let's support the fundraiser for our 1st Medical Battalion, for our brave and dedicated medics. Wishing us all a peaceful day, and of course, glory to Ukraine.